everyone, welcome to this demo on how to use the pen tool for a selection. Um, First, we have to train ourselves on how to do a path with the pen tool. Okay, so that's the first step. So for this lab, we're going to do it with this letter G. And I like this letter because it has straight lines and curves, so we can kind of like go around it and figure out a way of doing it. Okay, so the first thing that you have to organize on your panels right here is make sure that you have the path open. Okay, I'm going to first start with the background layer. I'm going to copy it. Okay, and right here, copy, just to keep that in as a backup. I'm going to go here to my path. Okay, I'm going to pull it out just so you can see it as I go. So this is going to be my path, and we're going to be working on this panel right here. And I'm going to select the pen tool, which is the letter P for pen tool, but you can click at this icon right here, and you go ahead and I'm going to move this so you can see it closer. It's this one right here. Okay, so these two things you have to have. First, select the pen tool, and then select the path panel. Make sure you have it open. And then once you select the pen tool, you always remember that every time you select a tool, the top part right here, options, will change. So the first thing that you have to do is make sure that you are on path and not on shape. Because if you have a shape, then you have colors more to draw. And that's not what we're going to do. We're going to do a selection. So we're going to select it to path. Okay. So that's the first thing that you have to verify. As soon as you click on your pen tool, go up here, make sure that you're in a path. Now that we're here and we have this path panel open, we're going to go to this little menu right here. We're going to click on it and then select new path. And you can title it, I'm going to put G just because it's the letter G. I'm going to click OK, and that's what we have. Okay. So now we're ready to start our path. So before we start, I'm going to zoom in. Oh, wrong shortcut. Let's go back and zoom in here, just so you can see how the pen tool works in this gray area. Okay, so I have my pen tool. I have the path. I created it. You can see that it looks like a layer. It's not layers. Layers are over here. Okay, it looks similar, but these are path, not layers. But I created a new one that has the letter G. So once I have the path, this works similar to the polygonal lasso tool that we kind of looked earlier, where you basically click and it will have, let me go back and change it to the pen tool. It will click, it will have an anchor point. So that's your first path. It looks blue. Okay. Now, as you click, it will basically, have straight lines, and similar to the polygonal lasso tool, when you go over the first one, you will see that little circle that appears, and that's letting you know that you can close the gap. So I'm going to go ahead and click there so you can close the path. Okay. So once you have all these dots blue, that means that you finish doing your path and it's selected. Okay. Now let's go back. So you can see a different way of doing it. So that's with clicking, right? Straight lines. Now if I click and drag, it does the curves. Okay. So you can see the longer than I pull it. So I'm going to do it this way so you can see. Right now it's really close, right? But if I pull it, it will make that curve even more drastic. Now you have to think about this as it's a bicycle wheel, right? And these are the handles. So these little handles will basically show you where the path is going. So if I'm going down, you should point it down. Okay. Now, if you don't want this line to be drastic, to just keep it close enough. If you want it to be drastic, then go like that. Okay. So if I'm going down, you want to have this one that you're pulling looking down. Okay. If I'm going up, you pull it up. If you want not to have it visible, you go closer. Okay. Or if you want to have a curve, you go like that. So you click and drag. Okay. So that's how the path works if you want to do a curve. So remember, you click and drag. Now, this is one of those things that you have to do just for fun. Open a document and start drawing crazy stuff on the computer. Don't try to make something perfect first. You're going to go crazy. So you have to go and have some fun with it and kind of go around and be like, oh, I get how this works. And then you get to feel how the tool works. Okay. So you have to make sure that you play with it first. So that way you can see how it works, and don't try to make anything perfect. Okay. Just go and do that and then do crazy stuff. Now, after you play for it for a little bit, I will show you some tricks. So the first thing is, the cool thing about path is that these points, you can move them around. You can see that these ones are white. They're not active. The one that's active is this one. I can move it with my arrow keys. Okay. I can also press Command on my keyboard and it changes the tool to this white arrow. I can click in a different point and I can move it. So once they're done, these points are actually editable. You can actually move them around. You can re-edit them to fit your selection or your path, whatever you want to do. So that's the cool thing. Now, if I did that and I move this one is active. So if I want to keep going on my path, I have to re-click the last one, and you will see that dash or diagonal line, and then you click. Now this one is active, and now I can keep going on. Okay, and you click and drag until you get to this point. All right, so that's how you do the path. Now I'm going to walk you through doing the selection of this G. Okay, and there's going to be some things that you will notice. Now on this one I have a straight line, so I don't want to click and drag. I'm going to click here, and you always want to do the path a little bit inside. Okay, and I'm going to show you in a little bit. You want to do a little bit inside so you don't pick any of that gray. And then I click here. It's a straight line. That's totally fine. Now I'm going to go to a curve here. Okay. So since I'm going to a curve, instead of just clicking here, if I click, it will be a straight line. I don't want that. Okay. So Command Z. I'm going to click and drag it out. And you can see how the line meets what I want. And that's the longer I pull, it will keep going out or in. Now, remember, when we do this, we can always move it or reposition it. I can move with my arrow keys, go down a little bit. Okay. I can move the point by pressing Command and moving it. And what I want to do is, I want to get it a little bit in. So something like that. Okay. Now, as you remember when I mentioned earlier, you want to point the handle towards where you're going. So if I'm going this way, you want to point it that way. You don't want to point it up or down. If I would have done that, it will look bad. So you want to point towards where you're going. So if I'm going down there, I'm going to do that. And then the next one, I'm going to hit spacebar to change to the hand so I can move across my image. I'm going to go here, click and drag. So now I have that. And then you keep doing that. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can go quicker. Click and drag. Now, don't try to do this right away. You have to play with the tool first. Okay. And you're going to click and drag. Click and drag. Click and drag. Now, here, I'm going to meet to this point. I want to show you something that you can do. Let's say that you want to get to this point right here, and you want to go from a curve to a straight line. If I click a dot, it will be fine, right? I can go straight to a line. If I click and drag, right, it will be a curve. But now I can do that still. And if I hold Option and click, it will keep a curve on this side, but not on that side. So that's a great way of, and I'm going to pull it here so you can see what I mean. That's a great way of doing this transition, because if you just do the line, it's not going to have the same capability of adjusting the curve. Okay, so that's why I'm going to do it one more time so you can see what I did. So I was here. I'm going to do it out here so you can see it. I click, let's say, here, and then it did a curve, right, straight line over here, but that's not what I want. I want to click and drag, and once I have that curve, I press Option, and then I click, and then I'll keep a straight line, and I can move it here. So now from here up, it will be a straight line. So I can go here and go here. Boom. That's a straight line. Move across. Boom. Boom. And then here. So now that we got to this point, we want to go back to a curve. So in this case, I want to click here and drag it out. Click here and drag out. So remember, the harder I pull, the more drastic that curve, so you can fine tune it as you go. I'm going to zoom out just because I want to go quick. I don't want to spend too much time here. So let's say I do it like this. Seems to be good enough. I do another one here. Remember, command, and then you can move it. I can do that with any point. Command and click on it. Command and click on it. And I can move it. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then click on the last one. Now you can see that this was a straight line. So the way that I should have done it, it's click and drag out. So that way I can control how that curve works. So there we go. And now you can readjust any of these points by pressing command and move them. Okay, so command and you click and it's like that, and I can kind of fine tune it and find a spot where it works better. So right now this one actually needs to be a little bit lower. There we go. So once you do that, the one thing I'm noticing right now is that this one is the only one selected. So I want to make sure that they're all selected. So I'm going to click on this gray area and then click on this again, so I get rid of the dots. If you want to get the dots activated again, for example, I'm out of here, so the path is not selected. If I click here and you press command and you click on the line, it will show you the anchor points again, so you can remove them. Okay, but once you do that, I would suggest that you click here, so you deactivate it, and then click here again. So that way you can have the entire G selected without the anchor points visible. And you want to do that because once we want to activate the selection, you don't want to have only one dot selected. You want to have the entire path selected. So we already closed the path. And then to go over one more time on how to close the path, in case you didn't notice, as similar as the other tools that we covered already, once you're in the last one, once you hover over the first one, you click and it closes the gap. Okay, so again, I want to click and drag on this one so I can make it as a curve. Okay, so once you do that, then you can click here on the gray area, click here again, and then go here to this little menu that's on the top right. Now we already closed the path, right? And we have our path done. You can see the letter G here. Let's zoom in so you can see it. You can see the letter G, right? But now we want to transform that path onto a selection. So I'm going to click here, go to the menu, make selection. Okay, so I made a selection. And I'm going to feather radius. Basically what this means is, similar to the brush, when we were using the brush, the hardness, right? When it had zero hardness, it was very soft. And when it had a lot of hardness, it was very defined line. So in this one is basically similar in the sense that the more radius of feather it has, a feather radius, the higher the number, the softer the edges are going to be. So in this case, I don't need a lot of, I'm just going to put 1. You can put 0. So it's a hard, line. I'm going to keep that at 0. But if you're selecting a person or an object, you probably want to have 1 or 2. So it's a little bit soft, so it doesn't look like cutting it out from a magazine. I'm going to cover that later in a different lab. But for now, you can just keep it at 0 and press OK. So as soon as you do that, as you can see, it transforms the path onto a selection. And this is really cool because now I can go here to my copy and press Command J, and now I have the letter G by itself. I basically extracted that letter G from that image. Now you can see there's a little bit of gray here, and you're like, oh no, I ruined that, I have to redo everything. Well, that's the cool thing about Path. One of the reasons is my favorite selection tool is that you can always go back to it. So if I delete this layer 1, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to show these two again. It stays here. So I can just click on it and I can zoom in here. And this was the section that I had that area. And I can press the P for the path, the pen tool. And I'm going to press Command, so I can see that white arrow. I'm going to click on the line, and now I can remodify that so I don't have that gray area there. So I do that, and as soon as I do that, let's see what happens when I only have one of the dots selected. I go here, make selection, 0, and boom, it selects it. Okay, so once I have that selected, I can go press Command J, and you can see that I don't have any longer that gray. So that's the really cool thing about, I have another one here, so I guess I have to go and fix that. But that's the cool thing about the path. You don't have to redo the selection. And the cool thing too is that if I save this document as a PSD, I can come tomorrow and my path stays there. This will stay there. So it's really important that you get in the habit of using path when you can, because if you ever have to go back, you have the selection here saved for you in case you need to rechange it or change something. You don't have to start over again. It might seem like a little bit of work in the front end because you have to start doing this path little by little, but once you have it done, it's there forever, and you can always go back to it and change it and modify it. Okay, so every time that I have a selection that I'm doing that I care a lot about, or I'm doing a big project, a composite that I'm mixing different things, and I want to make sure I keep this window open, like I want to be able to go back and have it done and then have to redo it. It saves you a lot of time in the long run, because a lot of times you're doing, back and forth and looking at how things look, and you do a little bit of feather, less feather, and you can always go back to it. So that's a really cool thing about using the path. One is that you can always remodify it, and second, that it will always stay there. You can always go tomorrow and change it to a different, adjustment. Like right now here, I can go here and fix this issue that I had, and then I can reselect it, make new selection. I'm going to delete this layer first so I don't mix it, and then Command J, and now I have that one without the gray. So see how easy it was? If I would have done any of the other tools of selection, so I would have to start over again the selection. That would have been so much work. In the long run, you can actually save time using the pen tool, because you can always go back and do little changes like that. Okay, so that's a really cool thing. Now, something to keep in mind, you have to make sure that after you're done doing this, get in the habit of clicking on this gray area so you don't have the path active. Because if you start moving stuff, I have this, and then I select my move tool, and you might start moving things, and you want to keep this untouched. So I try to keep this not selected so I don't see it. It's also distracting because you have that blue line. So after I'm done and I do that, I always click here just to get rid of it so I don't see it anymore. So I can keep working without seeing that blue line there. Also, if you go here and you have it selected and you press Command T, you will actually change that path. So that's why make sure that you click here, so that way you don't change it by accident. So as soon as you're done and you use that path to make the selection and you're happy, just make sure you click here, so that way you deactivate it, so in case you don't do anything by accident on the original path. Okay, so that's the pen tool. I know it's a lot of information, and I know that it looks easier than what it is. At first, it will take you a long time to get used to how to do a correct path and how to modify it and how to create, the curves is really hard to get used to, and also how to do the command so you can modify them, or the option to go from a curve to a straight line. So look at the video several times, practice. Remember, open a document or open this document and start practicing. Do it several times. It's not going to come easy at first, but once you get used to it, it will save your life. This will be a great tool to use for a lot of different things. And later on, I'm going to explain how to use the pen tool for other type of selections and filters and effects. Okay, so That's the lab. Please look at it and we'll catch up. And I'm going to go over this probably in a different lab again. Okay.